Welcome to Lead Today with me, Kalyna. Let's talk leadership. Hello and welcome to this episode. I'd like to discuss something that's challenging. And it came up with a client today and also recently for me when I saw this podcast had a 1-star rating. Not even review, just rating. Anonymous. I have no idea why. And so it feels like failure. It feels like rejection. What do you do when a door is slammed in your face or you feel like you've been rejected in some way on something that you're putting effort into? How do you deal? Well, great question. Let's get into it. So, as with everything on this show, when we're talking coaching concepts, it's not necessarily about changing your external circumstances, right? We can try to say, oh, well, let's try to convince that person. Let's try to convince that job that they should hire you, that hiring manager. Let's try to convince the person to take you back and, oh, they made a mistake in dumping you or firing you, rejecting you. You can go that route, and some people do, and they fight it. And I mean, you can certainly do that if you think that you've been wronged in some way and taken either treated unfairly in some capacity. What I do find with individuals that go down that road is more often than not, it's just mired with grenades and landmines of administration, legalities, and it doesn't often get them the redemption that they want. Now, that's not always the case. If you've been wronged and you want to pursue legal action or go down that road, far be it from my position to tell you what to do. But for most things in life, going the legal route, trying to convince or persuade the person that isn't agreeing with you and maybe rejecting you doesn't work. And it doesn't work in the long run either, because if they're going to do it to you once, they'll probably do it to you again and or won't respect you as much after you do your groveling. So let's just assume that you don't want to grovel. And if you want to go that route of persuasion and trying to convince that employer, partner, friend, whoever, then, go down that road. But that's not what we're going after here. We're going after a perspective shift surrounding what is rejection or failure and the trolls or those that don't agree with you, and maybe rightfully so. Okay, I've had people that I knew for years, they read my book, they didn't agree with my philosophies, and now, they just because they don't agree with the book, they don't really engage with me anymore. And that's, the price you pay for speaking your mind. And similarly, getting rejected for a job or some person rejecting you in a dating situation is the price you pay for putting yourself out there. So how can you reckon with the idea that there's going to be rejection and maybe even welcome it or pursue it? This is what salespeople do exceptionally well, and a lot of us don't do selling in our daily lives, or we don't think we do. But the reality is you are selling every single day. You are trying to convince and persuade every single day. And when someone gives you a no in whatever capacity in your life, it needs to be just a diversion of energy, a diversion of focus. And how can you do that? Well, when you have multiple prospects. Now, I'm not here to say date 100 people. That's probably not the way to go about sustaining a very healthy relationship if you're going to, put your eggs in a multitude of baskets, so to speak. But when it comes to jobs, I don't see why not. I see clients coming in wanting to change jobs and really getting very, very committed before they're even in an interview stage of, I have to work at, fill in the blank. I have to be at this company. And I think that's where we get ourselves into trouble, and we build up our expectations, and that's where disappointment comes in. Now, of course, it's good to be determined, and the people that get what they want certainly define what it is that they want. I'm here to say maybe the road to getting there isn't necessarily exactly the way that you pictured, and maybe it's not that entity at all. And I think that this is really important. You can define what you want, but the how is up for debate and isn't necessarily in your control. And so this comes down to a core coaching principle of what's in my control. And when you're down and out and it sucks because somebody gives you a 1-star review or 1-star rating on your podcast or says you're not a good fit for this role, I think it's an opportunity to do two things. One, okay, if you do receive feedback or you don't, regardless, you can say, what can I learn from this experience? And that's so critical because instead of just saying it didn't work out, this sucks, I think you can go and ask for feedback. And if that's not possible, then you can ask yourself, what could I do better? So maybe you don't get feedback from that hiring manager or from your ex, but you can absolutely ask yourself, okay, what could I have done differently? How could I have been a better partner to this person? Or what could I change about my resume? How can I do better next time? What can I do to improve this podcast? These are all questions that we can ask ourselves to see, okay, what's the content that's helping people? What's the content that's not? Right. And me doing an analysis of the analytics of this show and what episodes you listen to and what you don't. And let's see what's helping people. And then okay, you ask the people involved for feedback. If they're not giving you feedback externally, you ask yourself what you can learn. And then you have the learning piece, taken care of. Then the next step is to decide, okay, there are a lot of other doors to open. And I think we get stuck lingering on a fictitious idea of what the possibility was instead of being very real with ourselves about the situation. Yes, the job at such and such big tech company would have been nice, but you know what? It would have required a lot of long hours, or maybe, a big organization has, there are pros and cons to working at a big org. Look, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And I think when someone tells us no, we focus on the rainbows that we saw, and maybe we don't see the picture so clearly. Certainly that's the case when you think about an ex. In hindsight, oftentimes you remember their best qualities and sort of forget the things that weren't working. And it's not to say, okay, now go and focus on everything wrong with the person or everything wrong with the company, but it's just to think about having a more level-headed analysis of the situation. Okay, yeah, I wanted this. This was a good opportunity. Here's why. Here's what I liked about it. Here are the things that weren't so great. Okay, there are more opportunities down the road, and there's always another way. Okay, even if even when someone passes away and there's a death, yes, you can't get your parents back or a loved one back. True, not in this lifetime. At least not with the technology that exists today. Who knows what kind of tech is coming down the pipeline? I wouldn't be surprised at this point. But gosh, but you get to decide, okay, look, I'm really going to miss this person and their influence on my life. How can I keep their legacy alive? What are the things that I can do to commemorate and keep this person special to me? And of course, you know what? There is just a period of after somebody rejects you or something feels like a door closes, there's a period of time where you just say, this sucks. This is hard. I'm talking about when you're ready to kind of stop looping in those emotions and you're ready to pick yourself back up and say, okay, where do I go from here? So this episode isn't for you if you're still in the deep valley and not ready to kind of come out the other side. There is benefit in the valley. There is contemplation and learning that takes place when you kind of lick your wounds and say, this really sucks, and here's why, and this was painful. Here's what I learned. Here's how it really shaped me. Here's how this part of my story fits in with everything else. And so you want to add it into the narrative of your life, the story of your life, so that you can understand the order of things in your life and make sense of them. And when you lay them out that way in chronological order and in a sequence and bring meaning to what's happened to you, I think, most psychologists would agree that it's good to have a cohesive timeline to share about your life, but it also sort of nestles its place in the narrative that you have in your head and thus who you are. And if it's a really big kind of, one of those failures or one of those doors closing that really kind of sets you back and it just hits hard for you, then, it might be the case that that valley is a bit longer and you being ready to emerge the other side is longer, and there might be support to reach out to at that phase. So I think we have to also quantify or understand, okay, how big is the rejection that we're talking about? And when it's in the context of looking for jobs, I mean, if you only apply to one job and they reject you, that's going to suck. But in a job search capacity, I really don't think that's something where you want to wallow, right? Because there are multiple opportunities. People that I speak with that get mired in the details or focus on things outside of their control, like, oh, but the economy sucks and people are getting laid off. It's like, yeah, but there are companies hiring every day. And so which side of that do you want to be on, right? I mean, if you just got laid off, you're obviously on the side of someone being laid off, but that doesn't mean that you have to stay there, right? It's an opportunity to redirect your attention. And so if it's really something that's life altering, earth shattering, and losing a job can feel that way for sure. Wallow in it to whatever amount of time you're feeling is necessary, but then set a bit of a time limit, not to feel totally okay with it, especially if you feel like you were slighted, but to say, okay, I'm just going to mope in this for the weekend or the week, or, I'm going to take 2 weeks off or a month. I'm going to do a sabbatical. I mean, you decide, right? And then it's like, okay, this is the time I've allocated to this. And now I'm ready to get out there. It doesn't mean the sting is gone. It means, okay, now I'm ready to get out there again and try, right? So I think, okay, close the door, learn from it, look back on it, set a bit of time to wallow. It might take longer than you thought, but then at some point, start taking steps into the new direction. And so that's kind of a big picture of if something huge happens. But once you're taking steps and you're looking for a job and you're putting yourself out there and it's a more selling capacity type of rejection, I think we need to get more resilient and have bigger pipeline and just kind of keep at it. It's the same thing if you're in sales and you want a particular client. If you have this one big fish client that has to come through or else, everything else is going to fail. Well, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. And that might be true. There might be bigger clients or jobs that are your top picks that if they don't work out will be devastating versus some that are sort of nice to have clients or you're not so invested. But really it is a perspective, right? It's your perspective. When you build up a client and you decide, oh, this is going to be the biggest deal. Well, what if you line up 3 or 4 more deals of that size? Then one of them is not going to make or break you. And I think that's what's so critical is to hedge your bets, especially if we're talking in business, whether it's your business or getting a new job and or switching jobs while you're still in one. An employer will be really ready to fire you if that's the best thing for the business. So if you're in a job, even if you like it, my noticing based off of thousands of hours in coaching sessions and talking with people through their career options is the people that do best in their careers are switching on average every 2 years, whether that's an internal promotion or externally. And externally, they're making more money. That's just the research that's out there. On average, if you switch to a new org every 2 years, you're going to move up in rank and more significantly in compensation than if you stay in the same place. Now, up to you, right? If you're in your dream organization, you're working your way up, you really love your team and your people, and you're okay with that, fine. But if you're aiming at career progression up a ladder, then that strategy is just what is the best currently in the market. That's what's going to get you the results of more pay, a title boost, if compensation and role are what you're looking to get. Now, people make all kinds of excuses. I listen to them all day long and I get it. We have rationale. We reason with ourselves and set up these. I mean, I do it too, right? People reason with themselves into, okay, but I can't switch because, or this wouldn't work for me because, and I just want to invite you to say, okay, let me look into this. Let me look, right? So if you're in a role that you want to switch and in the next year, don't start looking, a month before you want to make a switch. Really, the people that I see doing the best, book a session with me, 6 months in advance and start putting the feelers out. And the people that are like crushing it are those that are constantly networking and having discussions with people outside of their organization and building those connections, so that it's not even just a 6-month process. It's sort of like a way of being in their career, so that doors open for them organically, and so that they're opening doors for themselves all the time. The more doors you open, the more likely you're going to like what's on the other side. So how do you stay strong amidst rejection? You have options. That's the case for if you want to negotiate your salary. You have options. If you had another offer on the table, I'm not saying to go and say that, right? Because, well, yeah, that's a question of integrity. You don't necessarily have to tell your employer that you have another job offer on the table. You can. It is a negotiating tactic, up to you if you want to use it. But knowing that you have contacts, knowing that you have the opportunity to make a switch, knowing that you're in high demand because you're good at what you do and you are a good, well, either a good person if it comes to dating, or a competent professional, depending on your field. If you know that, and you know you're up to date on the ins and outs of your profession, and you do well to serve, you serve your clients with integrity and commitment, then nobody can take that away from you. And so I think the place where you need to put your focus, if this is something that's bothering you, is in how can I improve, and what other doors can I pursue? Because those two things are the quickest and I think most productive ways to actually move on from a door that closes. If you clamor at the door, try to open it up again, you might get it open, but at what cost? Emotionally, the time cost, the resources, if we're talking about a legal route, and then your reputation, right? But again, your discretion as to if you want to, if you feel wronged enough to the point that it's worth 2 years of legal headache. And that is at least what it is. At least 2 years, if not more, of absolute legal treachery, if in costs, resources, time, engagement with that company. And so that really prevents you from closing the door with those people, right? Which same thing is holding on to your ex's stuff, or continuing to talk with their family members, or, being friends with them or going to see them. And we can justify that in so many different ways. Again, talking about it because I've done it. But that justification just holds you back. It keeps that door just a little bit open, and it makes that ending even more painful than it would be if you were willing to focus on how you can improve because of the situation, what you learned, and then when you're ready, start opening some new doors. So when I talk with people on the job front and they have, they want to switch jobs, but they apply to 3 jobs a week and that's all they're doing, I really wonder, how many doors are you opening here? And also the quality of those jobs. And we all know, or at least I think it's commonplace to know, that you need to speak with people if you want a job. And so that's your existing connections, really leveraging your network, because that is how you're actually going to get a role. And I've seen people that come from completely different industries into completely new job markets and get a new role within 6 months, following an approach of outreach on LinkedIn to people in related companies and teams that they're interested in, inviting to informational interviews, having those informational interviews and asking if they can get a referral for a particular role that they're interested in the company, and or if there is a role, right, to keep them in mind, and then follow up. And the people that do well with this are very process driven. They are willing to be diligent. I get that that's, good for some people, not for others. I can't say, I love that process of outreach and follow up, but that is what it takes, is to open new doors. And so similarly, right? Hey, 1-star rating. If you're listening, let me know what I did wrong. and let me know how I can improve this show. And if you have left a 3 or a 2 or a 4, let me know what I could be doing better, right? Open the door for feedback, open the floodgates, and know also that you just can't please everyone, can you? That's something I came to terms with a long time ago. Somebody that is, and I've criticized whether it's restaurants or podcasts or things, we all have judgments about the quality and our preferences of certain books, media, people, whatever, right? And so I think it's also, we've got to be okay with not being a yes for everybody. And I don't know if that helps you stay strong necessarily, but it certainly helps you kind of keep a level head on the idea that you're working to be everybody's best friend or have everybody like you or please everybody, because that's just not the reality. And if you stand for anything, then you're going to have people that stand for something different. And I think what's at stake there is the ability to have reasonable, rational, calm dialogue about differing opinions. And I hope that we can keep that, because it's such a foundational part to learning. Part of learning and part of growth is being able to accept when there's a better, point of view or approach to something and take it on and learn it. I mean, I'm constantly looking for ways that I can improve things based off of people that I'm seeing doing things well, that I respect and admire. And so if you are that person that's putting out 1-star ratings for people in whatever capacity, if you like to kind of tear people down, I get it. I get that criticism has its weird pleasure in some way of I think our minds are definitely wired to look for problems and find them and then fish them out and fix them, hopefully, after you've identified them. Some people really like pointing out problems, and I get it. I see problems everywhere all the time because I see them as business ideas of things to fix. So I totally understand the pull or the appeal to criticize. But do something with it. I mean, if you're going to criticize someone, give them specific ways that they can improve so that if they're willing, they can actually take it in and do something better. Give specific criticism or specific feedback if you're going to be somebody that gives feedback so that people can do something about it. And then again, where's your point of focus? I think people that are doing a lot of criticizing, especially in an anonymous fashion online, it's the reason I disable my comment section on Instagram. I just think it's such a waste of time. For the most part, if you have feedback for me, tell me to my face or, email me or DM me, tell me kind of directly. The kind of conversation, discourse, wars anonymously in chat rooms and comment sections, it's just, I don't want to be a part of it. So, I mean, if that's for you, great. But I think what's more important is to give specific feedback to the people that you're interacting with. If you think they're willing to hear it out, or if you really feel it needs to be send it, and then put the focus back on you, because that's really where your control is, right? Is what am I doing to improve? I'm seeing something in someone else that bothers me. How could I bring this into my life? Where in my life can I use this and improve what I'm doing and sharpen up my capabilities and competencies? So, at the end of the day, all of these coaching kind of episodes are all about you, how you think, how you approach things. That's what coaching is. It's looking at, okay, what's your current perspective? Is it hindering you in some way to get to the next level, or just making you feel bad? Is it a disempowering way of thinking that's not necessarily truthful, or only looking at one side of the equation? And we're really looking at, okay, what's another way of looking at this? What else is true that maybe needs to be focused on and addressed? Is there another way to look at this that can be more empowering? And when it comes to rejection, when it comes to, somebody saying, either we don't want you or this isn't good enough. My antidote is, okay, take in the feedback, do what you can to get better, and then start opening new doors when you're ready, because that's where you're going to really move forward, is finding more clients, looking at more jobs, more companies, talk with more people about those roles. You're not done until you stop putting in effort. And so if you need a new job and you want one, there are going to be some companies that you really wish you could work for that will say no. And then there will be others that say yes. And so you can focus on the no's, or you can rack up the no's because it's a whole part of the process. You only need one job. So use the facts of the situation, build it like a sales funnel where you're putting in more companies. You have to put in, let's say 100 companies in to get 5 interviews or 2 interviews or 10 interviews, depends on, maybe you don't have to put in job applications because you're that person that's consistently been networking. And so somebody on the client side wants to work with you. That's a good day. So use that. Hey, okay, I don't want to switch right now, but let me start opening up some doors, having some conversations, keeping people in mind and having them have me in mind for particular roles when I'm ready in 6 months or a year. And then the last thing is, if you are willing to make this more strategic and more process oriented, then create a spreadsheet. Be more methodical about the way that you're tracking these networking connections. LinkedIn is good for sure, is like an address book, but you need a way to kind of like tag and have those important players and follow up with them. And so I know personally, some people have, email lists where they'll kind of keep those key contacts and update them once a month or once every few months as, a newsletter for personal newsletter. That's one way to go about it. Or you can kind of have reminders and check in with individuals on a regular basis, especially if there's, it's an informal mentor or somebody that you just like to keep up with, have that reminder, check in with them once a month, once every few months, give them a bit of an update, send them some article that's interesting or help them deliver some value to them is always the top priority. So how do you stay strong amidst rejection? Keep going and keep opening more doors. That's the number one thing. And so give yourself the time to be upset and then start opening more doors and learn from the doors that have been closed on you, right? That was a key point too. So I hope you found this useful. I really understand the pain that goes into rejection, and I hope that you can channel that pain and that disappointment into really building something good, having something good and useful to you come from it, whether that be in the form of learning or in the form of new opportunities that you cultivate. Use that disappointment and that frustration for good to propel you to open new doors. If you like this episode, it would really mean a lot if you shared it with someone that is looking for that next job or feels like they're deep in the depths of rejection. And, if you can rate, review, subscribe, comment, like the show, every action that you take really does make a difference to counteract my 1-star rating and, get the word about the show out there, which means a lot so that, people that would enjoy it can find it. And those that don't, well, I hope they find the show that's for them. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen. As always, it means a lot to me to know that you're in my corner, and I'll see you next time. Take good care. Until then.